Now's the time for a great deal on a new Honda. It's time to drive smarter with high-tech features and excellent reliability. Check out the Honda Civic, Accord, or HR-V. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 4.99% APR on a 2025 Civic or a 3.99% APR on a 2025 Accord or HR-V.
See dealer for financing details. Exclude Civic Si and Type R.
Hey there, fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
I'm Arthur.
And it is, week 3 of our coverage of villains for the month of March, I think?
Yeah.
So this week, we figured we'd wade into some gray territory with it, I guess. And, because we've been defining villains more outright and talking about, the big ones, essentially, across literature, across, adaptations of pieces of literature and things. But I feel like there's a lot of confusion that winds up happening between the idea of an outright villain versus an anti-hero in a story. And it's something that is easily there's a lot of crossover that happens, obviously. And there are definitely similarities.
Blurs the lines.
Yeah.
That's what
there
it
are
is.
definitely similarities, but there are some things that, can help you kind of spot the difference to an extent, I think. So we're going to kind of get into that today, talk a little bit about the differences between them, how to, that's it, what you're kind of looking for with regards to one or the other, and maybe some of our own opinions too, to an extent, about for me, what's more of a villain versus an anti-hero.
We were just talking about it, and they're like, wait a minute, we need to hit record and actually talk about it, because we're discussing
because we're going to start pre-arguing about it, and I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Okay, before we get started on all of that, what's on your nightstand right now?
So right now, what's coming off my nightstand is the Transmutation Transients by Darkly Lem.
Yes.
So that has actually been released as of yesterday.
Yeah.
By Blackstone Publishing.
So as of, it was March 18th?
March 18th, yes, correct. Yeah,
okay,
that's true.
it.
And so there's already a review up on the site.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to read up about it, it's a crazy exploratory sci-fi novel that explores multiple universes, multiple characters, with an assassination plot and political aspects of things.
Do we know if this is the start of a series? Are we aware of if there's a...
Technically, yes.
Has it been left open, you found?
From what I heard is that it is part of a saga. I think it's called the Formation Saga.
Okay.
So there's going to be multiple books from what I understand. Nothing confirmed, but that's what it says.
Mm-hmm.
So that is off, and I am starting a Hell Divers novel called Rhino, The Rise of a Warrior by Nicholas Sansbury Smith.
Which is being published April 1st.
Yes, very soon. Bestseller, USA Today, New York Times bestseller author. And it is part of the Hell Divers series that he's already wrote. This is supposed to be a standalone that's starting off a new tangent, essentially.
Yeah.
And, I mean, just to give you a brief synapse, I guess, of this is New York Times essentially describes it as Conan meets Mad Max for a new generation. So
wow,
that's going to be cool.
That's intense.
Yep, I'm all for it.
Okay, cool.
What about you?
So I'm, what am I in the middle of right now? Let's see, I'm reading a few different books at the moment. I am reading one ARC that we were lucky enough to get from Blackstone. Thank you very much to you guys. I feel like that's all we're talking about lately, but they're pretty wonderful, and they've been very generous with us. Called When She Was Gone by an author by the name of Sarah Foster, which is also actually ironically being published on April 1st.
Nice.
So by the end of the month, you guys will have a review up for that as well that you'll be able to go check out over on the website. Psychological thriller, which follows it's multiple POVs throughout the course of the novel, but follows a woman and a mother, middle-aged woman, who travels to Australia when her estranged daughter, who's in her early 20s, who's nannying over there, goes missing along with the 2 children that she's been taking care of, and no one really understands why. They also haven't spoken in a number of years, so there's a lot of sort of elements to it anyway. And I'm just kind of getting into it. I'm not super, super far into it so far, but there's a lot of intrigue and things kick off in, as of chapter 1.
Oh, nice.
Essentially.
Good.
So I appreciate a really fast paced psychological thriller with getting right into the story. So that's cool. I'm about 100 pages into Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. his latest, I mean, I love like everything that Grady Hendrix writes, but 70s set at a house that a home that they used to send girls who were quote unquote in trouble to back in the day. So girls who became pregnant very young out of wedlock kind of thing.
I see, okay.
To conveniently go quote unquote like take care of a relative, wink, wink. But really the whole point was you would have the baby, they would give the baby up for adoption, you would go back home and pretend that nothing happened to avoid the disgrace to be brought upon your family. So anyway, so far I will say like I'm obviously enjoying it so far. Very much in the same sort of brand of like very dark levels of humor that Grady Hendrix sort of inserts into all of his novels. And I'm definitely curious to kind of see like where the supernatural aspect comes in. So far it hasn't, but there's always something.
Of course.
So I'm waiting for that to kick off. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'm not very far in, so it makes sense. And I'm also reading the third and final book of the Ruinous Love trilogy called Scythe and Sparrow by Brynne Weaver. Which
is that your Metro book?
It's my Metro. Yeah, it's my read it on the way to work book. I have a subway book that I read on the way in the morning when I go to the office. Well, if you know anything about that's it, like the Ruinous Love trilogy, the previous two novels were Butcher and Blackbird and Leather and Lark, both of which I've read before as well. There's always, again, sort of like dark romance, but with like a very sort of black comedy kind of feel to it, because there's a lot of funny stuff, and she has like a lot of tongue-in-cheek things that happen throughout the course of these novels. I'm really liking this one so far. This one's really fun, so I've loved this entire series. I'm a little sad that there's only 3 books, but I'm looking
that's the last one.
It is, yeah, in this particular trilogy, but I'm really looking forward to see what she does next. And Butcher and Blackbird is also getting a film adaptation, so that'll be cool. So I'm really looking forward to see how that goes, but it's a really fun series. I love this one. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, so shall we talk about some villains and talk about some anti-hero?
And have debate.
Okay. So for you, kind of to kick things off for you, how do you feel that you kind of like, what are like some sort of, I guess, core characteristics of like maybe villains that make them straight villains as opposed to like maybe morally gray or anti-heroes or whatever?
So like we've defined villains, straight up villains in the last couple of episodes specifically.
Yeah.
So definitely if you want to listen to that or get a more deep dive into it, check it out, fullybooked.ca. There's a podcast episode on it. There's a written component to it. So everything's there. Mm-hmm. But essentially in general, kind of like an overall thing, a villain is a character who is actively opposed to the protagonist.
Yeah.
Right? And that person or entity, whatever it is often evil, brings chaos, most likely selfish.
Yeah.
Tries to do evil and not good. But also it kind of depends on the setup of the setting.
Sure.
So if you have a protagonist, and it is set up in one way, you will have a villain, right? But if the setup, and this is kind of like what we're almost starting without recording, is the story starts with someone who is morally gray, or it's ambiguous if he is the protagonist and the good guy, or if he's like the bad guy or something, whatever it is, kind of like a la Bateman.
Patrick Bateman,
right, from American Psycho.
Yeah, so this was something...
That's where it comes into blurred territory, because the way that I see an anti-hero, it's someone who like lacks the usual heroic qualities, right? The morality, the honor aspect of things, the good, I guess, but he's still kind of the central part of the story.
Yeah, but I feel like there are so many like layers to it.
There is, of course.
In my opinion, so I find like, I guess where a lot of the differences come from, right, is that the straight villain of a story will be like completely selfishly motivated, like whatever their motives are, whatever their intentions are as a rule anyway, completely selfish. Whereas if you have an anti-hero, that character is more likely to be less selfishly motivated and more likely to be doing something overall for the good of other people, at least to an extent. However, it's the actions, the way he goes about them, or I shouldn't classify that, but the way that the character goes about those things that maybe skirts the line of morality and becomes a little more ambiguous. And that's kind of what like makes them the quote unquote anti-hero. So they're not obviously a hero because they're not doing everything above board, but they're not a villain because their intentions are actually a lot more noble than your straight villain. Whereas like that's it, like you were saying, you get the villain character has a tendency to just be wanting to cause chaos essentially, or cause like some sort of very negative outcome, or achieve their own selfish outcomes, but with no regard for anyone else, you know, whether anyone, particularly other good people around them, get hurt in any capacity.
Right. And so in your example, how you define it as, is that character the main character, or is it
not necessarily
a helper to the protagonist?
Not necessarily. You can have a villain or a morally gray or anti-hero who's not necessarily the protagonist of the novel.
So does it make him an anti-hero because he's not the hero of the novel?
He doesn't have to be. Yeah, I totally think that's it. You can have your protagonist who's another character who is a hero, possibly, or someone who's maybe like a little bit more neutral to an extent, or somehow gets like drawn into whatever it is that's occurring in the plot of the story. But this particular character who's the anti-hero doesn't have to, I don't, personally for me anyway, I don't think that they have to be the main character.
Right.
I feel like I read so many books these days that have dual or multiple POVs portrayed throughout the course of the novel, that's becoming like a different kind of reading experience now, where because you have so many stories in which like you've got multiple people's perspectives on things, it changes things, right? Whereas when you have one POV through the entire story, you kind of have a tendency to roll with that person's opinion about things as a rule, or that character's opinion about things. Whereas I find when you have like multiple POVs, it's also, you can also have the anti-hero potentially be a partial narrator of the story, but they're not necessarily the main character. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's also, I don't know, like I don't have exactly an example on the top of my head right now, but there's some of those stories that there is an anti-hero that comes in and he's technically helping the hero because it kind of aligns with what he wants to do.
But the hero doesn't think that they are, or whatever.
Yeah, but then like towards the end, they usually sway and try to get their own thing, you know, kind of like the cutthroat or backstabbing ones.
Kind of, but I find that at that point it leans more into the straight villain territory.
But then there's also a villain in the story, so it's kind of like...
Yeah. It's not to say that. It's just to say that, like, yeah, you can have a little bit... Like, I feel like, okay, like, I feel like what... I guess like a good example in more recent stuff would be something like Xaden's character in Fourth Wing, for instance, because there's like a lot of sort of like anti-hero qualities to him in the sense that he's doing a lot of things like, you know, like lying and going about things in a different way, and in a way that like Violet, like the main character, for instance, thinks is evil, or she just thinks of him particularly at the beginning of the novel, the first novel, I should say, there's 3 out now, as like being evil specifically, but there's a lot more gray to his character in the sense that like she comes to discover a lot of the motivations and the reasons why he's being dishonest and deceitful is actually like not for necessarily the negative kinds of reasons that she thinks initially.
Okay.
But Xaden's not the main character. Violet's the main character. Right. And in that particular novel, other than like the occasional like little chapter where Rebecca Yarros will add a different POV, like his POV or someone else's, his narration isn't really shown. It's just Violet. So I
mean, I guess a novel can have kind of all 3 of them combined, really.
In a way, yeah, that's it. You know, and I mean, like, I feel like an anti-hero, like, not that a villain can't be necessarily, but I feel like, you know, where you've got like your villains, your hard villains, I guess, versus your anti-heroes. I feel like an anti-hero has a tendency to be a little bit more relatable of a character, where you can also see yourself being like, I can understand why this character is maybe skirting outside of law, perhaps like law enforcement, or of like whatever, some sort of like rule that exists or morality clause of some kind that exists, you know what I mean? Like to get something done, because you can see why their motivations are good overall, but that they maybe have gotten desperate enough to have to do something, maybe not totally above board to get what they need to be. Yeah, that's it. Where I find like with a villain, it's just kind of like they're more like they barrel through everything, you know, and there's no thought for anyone else's well-being. It's just theirs. Yeah.
What about someone like Jay Gatsby?
Gatsby, I feel, has like anti-hero qualities to him more so.
That's it.
Because again, a lot of his intentions are pure, like they're not wholly selfish or wholly negative. Like, yes, there's some aspects of it in the sense that, yes, he's completely infatuated with Daisy and everything, but I do feel like he also tries to do some good. There is not like, he's not like a straight villain. There's a lot of complexity to that character.
Yeah, but then he's like also kind of morally ambiguous, right?
He definitely is. He's definitely doing illegal shit. He's doing stuff that he's not supposed to be doing. And he has continued to have shady dealings in order to get to the point that he's gotten to in his life and achieve like the wealth and success that he's achieved. However, there have been like some more pure intentions involved in it. So that's where I feel like you kind of get into that anti-hero territory. Yeah.
I guess another example that I have is Moby Dick, Captain Ahab.
Oof,
he's kind of like
vengeance,
but
also I get
admirable in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, kind of.
Like,
yeah, that's it. There's like, again, there's some like decent intention with that, which I guess you could argue about to an extent. But yeah, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's fair. Who would you say is your favorite villain or anti-villain? I guess let's go with anti-villain because we've covered
like
villains
the
ones in the
Antihero.
past. Yeah, anti-heroes.
I mean, oh gosh, I feel like I get like getting into like some of like the newer stuff. Pretty much any romantasy book that you pick up at this point, the majority of them are like, I'm the devil, but also I'm doing things for the right reason. Like the majority of like male characters, particularly in those novels, when you get into like the love story of it, is that they're doing their maybe what we think of as what should be a villain or a negative character. But of course, again, they have more pure intentions and noble intentions with regards to that. So that's it. So like Xaden kind of falls into that territory. I guess in like the ACOTAR universe, like Rhysand sort of falls into that like that kind of category as well. Particularly, again, a lot of it's based on like assumptions that the lead characters make about these guys at the beginning, where they assume something about them that is not necessarily the truth, which comes out like a little bit later. God, if I get into like I guess if I get into this is you're gonna be like, what? If I get into like the dark romance side,
I'm gonna sip my tea.
If I get into like the dark romance side of things, there are books like Lights Out by Nevessa Allen, which have like blown up all over the place in the last like year or two, which, in which again, like the male character is questionable and goes about things in a very like not necessarily like morally astute or lawful way, particularly, but again, like there are more positive and noble intentions, and he does not want people to get hurt. But he does stalk someone for a while.
Okay, that's how it works in dark fantasy novels.
Yeah, dark romance.
Dark romance.
This one's just like contemporary romance, but dark romance. Just getting into all of it. Because I mean, if you get into the dark romance sphere, like there's also like Zade Meadows and Haunting Adeline is very much in that kind of sphere as well, doing really fucked up shit, but also doing things with good intentions and saving people. And you're like, oh, okay.
Hey, speaking of dark romance, what about Joe Goldberg from You?
Joe Goldberg is a villain.
Villain?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. I cannot use the word hero in any capacity with that character. I can't do it. Because he also kills these women. He kills them. He kills them.
No, I know, but I'm trying to, because we all see it from his perspective. So he's like rationalizing his obsessive behavior and everything. So like it makes him kind of, I guess, a little bit uncomfortably relatable,
I think that some people felt that way. So full disclosure, I haven't read the books, but I think that some people felt that way. Like we've watched the show, right? We've watched all of the seasons so far. Actually, the last season's coming out at the end of April.
Yeah.
I think maybe some people kind of felt that way through part of like the first season, which was like weird and uncomfortable for a little while, until I will say, at least like for me, even any feelings that I might have had that way disappeared when he killed the female main character in Bex in the first season.
Oh, right.
He kills her at the end of the season.
Yes.
Sorry, spoilers. My bad.
Okay, well,
it's been like 4 seasons. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm sorry. But you know what I mean? Like for me, I feel, but see, that's my Patrick Bateman argument too.
Right,
because I know, again, I know that Patrick is an unreliable narrator. And so yes, perhaps he hasn't killed as many people as he thinks that he has, because he's, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But at the same time, the intentions are always negative. They're always bad.
For him,
and
yes.
if he really does do these things, all of that intent is very negative, and he does these horrible, atrocious things to people. And so for me, Patrick falls into more of a villain, just straight villain category than an anti-hero. And I feel like Joe Goldberg is, maybe he toes the line a little bit more, but for me, he's a villain.
I feel like he toes the line a lot more, right? Like he's doing it for certain good reasons than when he has a baby, and that's like...
Okay, sometimes to like get out of things to an extent, but I feel
course.
like, that's also clever writing and stuff to kind of make it, because it would be hard to watch the show if you hated the character. So, so maybe not, but I feel like at the core, it's much more negative than positive, in my opinion. That's
fine. That makes sense. Tyrion Lannister, I think that one's a little bit more clearer, I guess. Because he's like, morally flexible.
He is very much, but
self-serving.
But also with overly good intent, mostly good.
But that's what I'm saying, exactly.
Really
so I feel like he's more clear-cut,
yeah,
right?
He's more like your morally gray hero. I wouldn't even call him an anti-hero. I'd call him like your morally gray hero, basically.
Maybe at the beginning he was a little bit, because now after he got like a little bit better.
Yeah,
and
for
stuff.
sure.
But at the beginning...
maybe at the beginning he had more of like an anti-hero.
Because there was a lot of self-serving.
Oh, definitely.
For him, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But that definitely shifts throughout the course of the show.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. So do you think that anti-heroes are becoming like more popular than traditional heroes?
Yeah,
like lately specifically? Okay.
Let me tell you, the Book Talk girlies love a morally gray hero in their stories. And I get it. Like, I also am like, yeah, because again, like I know we've talked about this in the previous episode, but I feel like a lot of people now are looking for more nuance with regards to like their villains or their heroes for that matter. Like, you don't just want your traditional like old style Western, I am the bad guy, I am the good guy. Yeah. And like, it's because I wear a black hat and you wear a white hat, and that means that I am horrible and you are good, and that's it. And there's no in between, and there's no... Yes, they have reasons for doing what they're doing, but it just feels like everything is so one-dimensional, and I feel like people just don't want that anymore.
Yeah, no, because it's too boring, right?
Is so
like
boring.
Life is so gray, and there's not black and white, and you just have to have that. You have to have that when you're reading those books. It has to be relatable, right?
So I find like, and also like I find like, a lot of the more straightforward, I guess, villains, in the sense that the ones are like full villain, full stop. No real redeeming qualities per se, are in slightly older stories. Like I feel like, in the last like 10 or so years, we've started shifting in a different direction from that. But, if you look back, obviously you've got like your like Sauron and stuff in Lord of the Rings. Like those are purely evil characters, right? Yes. Sauron, Voldemort, who else am I thinking of right now? I wrote it down. Hannibal Lecter.
I mean, everyone we discussed in the previous episode.
Exactly.
Basically.
That's it. Like, those characters, to me, are just villains.
Yes, of
like,
course.
Everything that they do is purely selfish. They will hurt anyone in their way, kill anyone in their way to get where they need to get, with no regard for anyone else. And they're just hyper-focused on their own goal with no thought of anything, really, for anyone around them, right? Whereas I find, even in that same vein, you get into, like, your, like, Snape, for instance, is a good kind of example of an anti-hero to an extent.
I had him on my list. Yeah, because that was a good example.
Yeah, because, and again, Snape is such a good example of a character who comes across as more villainous because of preconceived notions from the other characters in the story. And notions that he chooses to leave in place as well, of course. Which is something that shifts, again, throughout the course of the story. Like, not really till the end, but... up until that point.
It's a dual arc, right? Sometimes 100%. You're not sure if he's with
Voldemort or not.
Yeah, that's the other ones and everything. And so yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah, he falls into that category. I feel like, I'm going back kind of in like the anti-hero sphere. Like Macbeth is not a bad example of that. Like Macbeth and like Hamlet. Okay. Shakespeare had some in his where maybe these characters had positive intentions at first, but they kind of like... They go about things in the worst possible way. And it also bites them in the ass, to be fair. So, like, they toe the line in a different way because they wind up becoming villainous.
Right.
Due to their actions. Like, they kill people. And stuff. And you're like, oh, yikes. But I think that there was, like, an attempt at that a little bit, which is, like, in the way back time. So, it was already something that maybe we were, like, leaning towards at a time. And then it kind of went away for a while. And now it's like, everywhere.
The what?
The idea of an anti-hero.
Oh, yes, of course, yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean,
Like
you gotta do it.
You see it in. I feel like comic books do anti-heroes a lot, and I know it's because we
Yes,
do a hero
I mean,
and villain arc a lot of the time in comic books.
you have to have
obviously.
those.
Yeah, but it's like the ones that are like questionable, right, with the things that they do. So you've got like Deadpool and like Daredevil and like a lot of those ones that do some things that you're like, this toe's the line, guys.
The Punisher?
Yeah.
Kinda?
I don't even think kinda. I think yeah.
Yeah.
Who can definitely, I feel, fall into the villain category a little more easily than some of the others. Even Batman, like, that's it. They have a... Again, yeah, but...
Batman is anti-hero.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
All of
right.
these I'm saying are anti-heroes. They're not villains for me, anyway.
Yeah,
like, I feel
yeah.
like comic books do that very regularly. So,
Yeah. Speaking of someone closer to comic books, what about The Witcher? I feel like he falls closer to the anti-hero. Yeah.
I guess he does.
Because he does some morally great choices,
Sometimes. I don't find the choices he makes are that bad, really. I think
they're
it's
not, but
no, I think
they're not great sometimes.
I guess not, but I think some people confuse an anti-hero or a morally gray hero with a grumpy hero, which is kind of just what Geralt is.
Okay, now we're just going deep into the segmentation.
He just feels cranky to me most of the time. He answers everything in grunts and growls and like... But I feel like overall, he's always doing something like good more than anything else. He just goes about it in a surly manner. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, because, his whole thing of like not wanting a child, and he gets it anyways, he's all upset about it, but then he tries to save her regardless.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
he doesn't want that.
So then,
it's like all over the place a little bit,
fine.
right?
So then does it make him a reluctant hero?
Maybe. Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good definition,
more,
I guess.
which is also something that you see semi-regularly as well.
There is something that actually I do want to pick up, and also it's going to be on Apple TV very soon.
Yeah.
The Murderbot series.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Murderbot Diaries.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it. Like I said, I do want to pick it up and watch the TV show at the same time, but apparently it's like it's an android, right? It's a bot. But like it hacks into its governor modules to gain freedom. So it like tries to become independent, but it also kills humans sometimes, but protects his human companions. It's kind of like both sides.
Okay.
He's playing like both sides at the same time, it seems.
Isn't that like Alexander Skarsgård is doing that or something?
He's doing it,
Yeah.
It's a new adaptation that's coming like this year before summer, from what I remember.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So I want to check that out, and I'm definitely going to pick up the book on that too.
Interesting. I mean, like in that same thing, I'm thinking of Apple TV shows. Lol. I feel like what's her name? Juliet in like Silo. She's like a reluctant hero for me.
Yeah, reluctant. Yes.
Yes, not
yeah,
anti-hero.
Not anti-hero. Exactly.
No, I feel like Juliet is like a reluctant hero, which I think is a good kind of example of that because she's like, oh, I don't want to do this, but then she knows she has to. So
kind of, yeah, because in the situation that she's placed, that is, yeah,
she basically has no option. So
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Do you know of like top of your head? Is there any cases where the anti-hero becomes the villain?
Oh God. I mean, spoilers. Although at this point, if you haven't read the story, I don't know what to tell you. But in the first Akatara novel, so in A Court of Thorns and Roses itself, there is some of that where between books 1 and 2, Tamlin's character has a pretty... not a shift that you couldn't see coming at all, but a shift that I think most of us didn't because it was against formula. And so we were like a little surprised to see a character who overall in the first book we felt was heroic, maybe become not very much so and go in a direction that's pretty uncomfortable in the second novel in A Court of Mist and Fury.
Okay.
I feel like he's a more recent example of that.
You think he's going to come back in the next ones? Like he's going to go up and down type of thing?
People are wondering if there will be some form of redemption arc for that character because so far we're 5 books in and there isn't. So, yeah. So I'm kind of wondering where that's going to go. And I think a lot of people are. Mm-hmm. Some people don't want it at all. Some people would to see it happen just, for that character to be able to redeem himself because there were positive things about him at some point. We read the first book and people liked the first book when they read it. And then they read the second book and they were like, holy shit, this is very different. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, sometimes it's okay to see the villain win or the anti-hero win. I love those kind of books or even stories or movies or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because it's always like, oh, yeah, the good always wins. That doesn't work always like that.
No,
Show me places when...
because life doesn't always work that way, right?
Exactly.
So,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so those things are kind of very different.
Interesting question here. Do you think that world building
Yeah.
in the novels influence how the character is seen, whether good or evil?
Maybe.
I feel like it has.
Yeah.
Because the way that you create the setting and you set a character in it, because you've built it up so much.
Yeah.
Someone you put in there and he does like one bad or good thing, you can completely turn it into your head and be like, oh no, this is a bad guy.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
No, I definitely think that's possible. I mean, I feel like even if you look at something like, with like a really expansive world, like Dark Tower or something.
Right.
Like those, like it's, those characters can easily flip-flop, potentially, depending on the choices that are made.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah.
And
I mean, like
maybe seem more evil or more good based on certain choices within the universe that they exist
for
in.
the choices, yes, for sure. There are some choices that are, weird. Or a bit crazy.
Yeah.
So then the choices part, yes, I guess. Like, I don't know if you have to count how many good or bad choices someone's made or whatever it is. I think it's a general,
I don't think that there's like one number.
But definitely, like, we were talking about Randall Flagg character
Yeah.
in previous episode and stuff. He does do some good things throughout his arc.
Yeah.
Like in The Stand, he does save that guy in prison who was going to die of starvation,
That is
essentially.
true. And I mean, like, it's
but
because
the
he wants
purpose
to use
was
him.
exactly
So
that's
again,
what I'm saying.
selfish motivation. So
Yes.
again, Randall Flagg really is fully like on the villain side of things.
Yes.
There's not really any talking him into an anti-hero status.
Yeah, that's it. But that one, until you read through the whole story and everything, it kind of depends on the setting that he's at. Like it's a terrible place to be in, and he's kind of going there and saving people.
Yep.
That's nice, but what's the end result of this?
Yeah,
That's
it.
the issue.
No, it's true. I mean, like in the same way that, like, okay, so I mentioned at the top of the episode, like I'm reading the last book in the Ruinous Love trilogy right now, and so that's it. The previous two books, I haven't gotten super far into this one, but the previous two books that kick things off and also made the series really popular, right, is that, like, this isn't a huge spoiler. You kind of know it immediately, but both main characters in that novel, the female character and the male main character, are both serial killers who meet and fall in love with each other.
Nice.
And have a jolly old time finding other horrible people to kill. But they very much read into the whole idea of, like, I guess they're good. Like, I guess that they're anti-heroes. Like, because, they're doing something terrible. But again, both of them are choosing people to kill based on how much shittier these people are that they're choosing in the first place. Where it's like, well, this person rapes and murders little girls and stuff like that. So, like, I'm going to fucking kill him, obviously. Like, those kinds of things. So you're kind of like, yes, he might. It's like a Dexter kind of thing.
Right,
where
it's like
I might be bad, but this motherfucker is worse.
Yeah, that's it.
It has that vibe to it. Yeah. So see, like, so sometimes they're your main character, sometimes they're another character in the novel.
That's it. Yeah. There's a lot of blurred lines and depending on how things happen in the book.
How do you feel in overall, like, just to kind of, like, I guess close things out a little bit, how do you feel overall in terms of, like, do you like an anti-hero in your story, or would you prefer just, like, a good guy and a bad guy?
No, I am more chaotic. I want an anti-hero anytime that I can get it.
Yeah. I love a person who's like, you're like, I'm going to do overall something good, but it's going to be really fucked up while I'm doing
That's it. Well, like I mentioned in the previous episode, I love those stories or movies or whatever it is where someone comes in and just does chaos for the purpose of doing chaos.
Yeah, it's
fun. Just like,
it's not relatable, but it's fun.
Yeah, and not like, like evil, chaotic angle, I guess, but it's more like neutral chaotic, you know what I mean?
Oh, like
which is like,
neutral,
if you look at a Matrix, whatever it is, that's kind of like where I see the anti-hero, I guess, being is in the neutral chaotic. And I love that. I love that. Because just doing good is, I find it's kind of boring. You know,
it's
like,
weird, right?
Yeah, but it's also like, then it's like, what are you too good? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is there any other no one is 100% good.
No.
People try to, but no one is. So like, you can't be a perfect angel walking the earth and doing good things. Also, it will kind of get boring. Like, what am I reading here? Just a goody two shoes walking around.
Yeah. Again, probably
you need depth of character.
Yeah. Again, probably why they're so popular, anti-heroes, because they tend to have more complexities than a villain does, and it makes the story just more interesting to read. Always.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's it. What is our closing episode?
We're going to be talking about. I mean, we're going to get into talking about different iterations of a very famous villain who has
Don't
been
spoil it.
adapted a bazillion and a half times, which you might be able to guess even just from what I'm saying right now. From early all the way up until modern day. We've got adaptations for forever for this character. So we're going to be checking out a few things to do with them and kind of chatting through maybe we'll do a ranking.
We should do a ranking.
We could do a ranking of some of our favorite portrayals of this character and, that kind of stuff. And then talk a little bit about the original and how things have differed as time has gone on.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah. Cool. Love it.
Okay. So in the meantime, obviously, you guys can always check out everything that we've got going on over on the website, where we've got a lot of reviews coming out more recently, especially for our ARCs. So check that out at fullybooked.ca. You can sign up for the newsletter while you're there, too, so you get a whole week's worth of content at the same time. Yeah. And always, obviously, check us out on our social media platforms. So Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky. I think that's it.
All the platforms. Yeah. All of them.
Exactly. Everything.
If you're not there, tell us.
Yeah.
Make an account.
And just search for Fully Booked CA.
Sometimes fullybooked_CA, but that's just like Twitter.
See what you can do.
Mostly.
And no one uses Twitter anymore, so it's fine. Anyway, so other than that, we will see you guys next week and keep on rating.
Ciao, guys.
Now's the time for a great deal on a new Honda. It's time to take an adventure with rugged capability and commanding style. Check out the Honda Ridgeline, Pilot, or CR-V. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 3.99% APR on a 2025 Pilot, a 1.99% APR on a 2025 Ridgeline, or a 2.99% APR on a 2025 CR-V.
See dealer for financing details.